Sorry about that. That's a little loud.
There you go.
It's a little wild for a Thursday, especially when the monster's still here.
Friday, Tim.
Friday monster.
It's Friday, Tim.
It's Friday.
What day of the week are you on?
So exciting.
Oh, in my head, it's Tuesday.
Welcome to the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast, formerly known as the Hurdle Rate podcast. I'm here with Tim Kotzman. I'm Ed Julien. And today we'll be talking to Tim about his journey on this path towards creating a media empire. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Great to have you here. 160 some episodes.
But who's counting?
Who's counting? Is this what you imagined this would turn into, or
no?
You just said, "I'm bored. I'm doing a podcast," and
I don't think maybe I was bored. I don't know.
Yeah, welcome to the Bitcoin world. It's like you ask anybody in the Bitcoin world, "What were you doing 1 year ago?" And did you think you would be here? And you can never get to that point.
I can't believe it's not even been a year yet. Are we even recording yet?
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm the host.
Okay, cool.
I built this empire, man.
Yeah.
I need to take some credit on this.
Yeah. So October 5th of last year was when it started, and today's August something.
Yeah.
So it hasn't even been a year. Even I know we'll get into the unconference in New York City, September 17th. It still won't even be a year, which is wild to me.
So on October 4th, you sat down and you said to your unnamed partner, which I won't dox her, but you said, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to do hundreds of episodes. I'm going to start a conference company. I'm going to become this face of True North. I'm going to have Bitcoin Treasury companies begging me to be on their advisory boards. And I'm going to go to Prague.
Well, she did enjoy the Prague part.
The Prague part
but
was
I don't
cool.
think we knew any of it.
It wasn't on the schedule.
Yeah.
And you're going to do an interview with Fong Li, the CEO of Strategy. You haven't done your Sailor one yet, have you?
Yeah. I mean, we were
individual
on
ones.
Not the individual one.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe in the next decade or so.
I told you to hold out for that Miami invite.
Yeah.
That's the key. You got to get the invite to Miami, and you got to do it on the yacht. You got to do it on a boat.
I think that would be pretty cool.
That'd be pretty epic. If the boat's moving too, that would be even more epic.
Yeah.
See if you can throw down those terms and see what he says.
Yeah. See if Colin and Matt are available to just jump on a yacht with some video equipment. Colin's in. Colin's in for that one.
I think this will work. But you've been able to interview some fascinating people. You've been able to really open up the Bitcoin Treasury space to tens of listeners, tens of thousands of listeners. Sorry.
At least a dozen listeners.
12 listeners. Thank you.
I don't know if my mom even listens, but I remember last Thanksgiving, one of my nieces said, "Tim, do you have a podcast? Uncle Tim, do you have a podcast?" I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Is it about Bitcoin?" And I said, "Unfortunately."
Yeah.
I mean, but my nephew Noah is very excited about Bitcoin. He thinks it would be exciting to own a whole Bitcoin. I don't know if he's really conceptually there yet, but so there's a little bit of a division in the family about how interesting
about
Bitcoin
what it
is.
Well, you're getting close to syndication. NPR will be calling any day now.
What's NPR?
Exactly.
Who cares?
Yeah, we're going straight to what's Malcolm Gladwell's company, the podcast company, whatever. Yeah,
Digital Community. We're going direct with the digital conference to the masses.
You do reach a global audience. You've heard from all over the world, literally. When you get the right retweet, your Fong Li episode, million plus views on X.
Yeah, we stopped counting after 1 million.
It does, doesn't it?
Well, it didn't stop counting. I just started counting.
But it doesn't go to like 2M, does it? I don't know.
It
may be.
No, yeah. I've seen posts on X that go to 2, 3, 4, 10M. Usually it's Elon posting something, but yeah.
Yeah. So what have you learned in this year? What have you picked up on interviewing all these people, 160 people? What have you learned about people? What have you learned about this space?
I've learned, it's a great question. I've learned the power of the Bitcoin community, which I don't think I probably don't fully grasp yet, but until the podcast and then the digital conference and then announcing the unconference, the amount of people that have just reached out and said, how can I help? How can I support? Even reaching out for co-hosts and some bigger names actually responding to a Twitter DM or an email saying, yeah, I'll be there. Yeah. It's like very humbling of how the community will rally around just moving the message forward. So
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest takeaway.
And speaking as a long-time listener, short time contributor, I can say that the quality of your podcasts have just gone through the roof. You know, I go back and I've got to admit, when I decided to join you, I realized that I had probably only listened to 40 of the 160. And I'm like, when am I going to get all these? You know, I got my 40 HPW and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to get there. But
2x speed, maybe.
yeah, or like Jeff Booth, he listens at 5x, and I was like, no, you don't. He goes, yeah, listen. He puts it on 5x. I was like, blah, 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 blah. Like, you understood that? He's like, it took a long time, but I trained myself. And
That's wild.
yeah. So your podcast to him is like 12 minutes. He just knocks it out.
It's pretty bite-sized piece at that point.
Bite size. He gets into 700 podcasts per week, I think, or something. But no, I'm just making that up. But yeah, and the thing that I think you really bring to the space, which is really critical, is your just listening skills. You sit there and listen. A lot of the podcast hosts will run right over their guest and interrupt them and decide where it's going to go. But you kind of can.
That's where it's helpful to never have an aspiration to have a podcast, because then when you trip and fall and end up in this room, then you're just like trying to listen and learn.
Yeah.
So
which is kind of funny, because when I see you with your partner, you just do all the talking. You're like, yap, 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 yap. You never let her get a word in edgewise. And then you come in here and
It's unbelievable.
a great listener. Yeah.
Night and day.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about yourself, Ed. Well, I would love to.
Yeah. Ed, tell us about your actual background before the Bitcoin jobs. People don't tell us. So where did you grow up?
Well, this started about 2,500 years ago. I found out I was Neander. Edit. Go to a widescreen.
A wide shot. Where's that guy when you need him to be shouting stuff?
That joke never goes well. No, anyways, you saw an article, same article that Eric Wall and David Bailey saw on Gawker in 2011. Said you can, go into the dark web and buy stuff with this internet money, and I have the quintessential early adopter, and I said, well, I got to check that out. Bought Bitcoin and at $6 each. Couldn't figure out the dark web, and I just said, oh, whatever. And then about a year later, I needed $1,000, and I went and sold it for the same $6. I didn't know that it had gone to $39 in between. I think if I had known that, I probably would have stopped and said, what is this? I thought it was just this internet token or whatever the word was at the time for $6. Anyways, about a year later, somebody says, what is this Bitcoin thing? Oh, yeah, it's internet money. It's like $6. And it was at like 1,000. And I had this little heart attack, and I'm like, justifying with God, maybe I didn't sell it. So I go to mountgox.com, and it was 404. And I'm like, oh, well, should I be happy that I got my $1,000 back, or sad that I didn't self-custody? But whatever.
And for those listening, 404 wasn't the price. That's the error.
Was gone. That was when Mt. Gox blew up, and
no
it was
more
gone.
website.
Yeah, and even if I would have still had it there when they did this Mt. Gox reclamation, I would have only got $1,000 back, not the Bitcoin equivalent. That was how the Mt. Gox thing worked. So I was kind of lucky. I got my $1,000 back. But more importantly, I then got heavy in, and my first years were probably mostly just gambling and speculative.
I actually
like a stock.
It's mine.
Moved
Sorry,
to Amsterdam.
I just brought it in.
Got involved with the local Atlanta Bitcoin community, Tidwell and Mike Casey
It's me.
and Brandon Iglesias and guys, and saw that, hey, this is something bigger than that. Moved to Amsterdam for a couple of years,
It's
and
just a cool
they have
shot on a live
5
stream. They have
meetups a
like that
week.
in the
They have
background.
Bitcoin Wednesday, which was the biggest meetup in the world, 300, 400 people. You had the guy who claimed that he was
I need all
Satoshi.
Which one?
No, the
main one.
Craig Wright.
Help I can get.
You had Vitalik Buterin. I mean, it was
Especially
crazy
when
the
you
people
put-
that were
put
coming
on any
into
makeup today.
Amsterdam at the time, and nobody knew who they were, or we didn't even know who they were, I mean, like when Vitalik came in, it was like, who's this skinny Russian guy? It's like, oh, I'm starting Ethereum. And you're like, whatever, dude, it's not Bitcoin. And we should have all been keeping journals to be able to go back and see what we were thinking and what we were saying. But then I really got into the kind of the libertarian freedom part of it. This can change the world. I don't think the sound money concepts and the money's broken stuff was really a thing yet. It was still about, hey, we can trade money without using banks. Moved back to Atlanta, got really involved with the community there. And by 2019, I thought, well, I've been in manufacturing 25 years. I said, I'm done. And then I just made some bad decisions. I found ways to cut my stack in half by doing a restaurant and a science summer camp company and a software startup that I thought I need to diversify. And they didn't work out. And so I'm sitting around home. My wife said, you got to get a job. And I just couldn't stand the thought of going back into manufacturing, and saw a job fell out of the sky with Bitcoin Conference for enterprise sales. To bring enterprise to the Bitcoin conference, which was wonderful. Mike Germano and John Christovich
We're a
hired me.
bunch of risk takers.
And it was just it was a difficult time because enterprise wasn't ready. I still don't know if they are ready, right? You go to a Fidelity and they say like, man, we don't want to be too closely tied to Bitcoin. It's a little toxic. And even Red Bull told me, it's like, no, Bitcoin's toxic. I'm like, you're Red Bull. You're calling Bitcoin toxic? And
You're
Red
extreme
Bull?
Sports.
Yeah. So we weren't really able to bring in enterprise. What you saw in Vegas of the enterprise hall was what we were trying to build. It's coming together. Had a friend, Mike Casey, who's a director of engineering at Mara, working on a sidechain project at Enduro, which is real exciting. And got to work on that for about 8 months, trying to see what is Bitcoin Layer 2 going to look like. You know, working with guys like Charlie Spears at Blockchain Media. And it was just really fun being in that Layer 2 space. Julian Duran, I mean, just some guys that were really fun to work with. And then strategy called and said, we need help with our conference. And you jump at the chance, right? And I, was commuting back and forth to North Virginia, learned a lot about how they do things and what the Bitcoin strategy looks like to them, sitting next to giants. And between the commuting and wondering what is a Bitcoin company and stuff, I thought, I think I can do some bigger and different things outside of the corporate world. And I think you were the first one I called and said, hey, Tim, I'm not going to do strategy anymore. What do you want to do? And I was like, funny that you should ask. And then we talked about your ideas here for
Presenting.
Wide Shot, the Bitcoin Treasuries unconference, September. You're supposed to do it together.
17th.
September 17th,
2025, New York City.
That was a TJ Miller credit right there. Hopefully he'll watch this one day. Immediately excited.
And we're obviously very in sync, right? We said it in unison. Bitcoin Treasuries, New York City on conference, September 17th.
Yeah, that's what we meant to say. And you can find tickets on Luma. You can find the link in the show notes over here, right there. That's where the show notes
That's exactly
are.
where it is.
Oh, if you're not watching this, then I pointed down. And real excited about it because I felt even when I was at Bitcoin conference, I'm like looking around the room and I'm like, well, people are really getting panel fatigue, in my opinion. This is my opinion. And some people were starting to get to presentations. Saylor went to full presentations at the Prague conference and blew the roof off. And so some people do really good presentations, some not so great. But this unconference concept was stolen, borrowed.
I've been very public about that. Fred Krueger put on just an absolute gem of an event. Can you walk us through that? Santa Monica last fall. We were both in the room, but had not met each other yet.
No, I know you. I was there for the technical track, and you were there for the investment or treasury track.
The Quant Bros track.
The Quant Bros track. There were 4 sofa sets, not much bigger than this room, and 4 topics, and then every hour a different thought leader who would, get in front of the sofa set group and say, hey, this is the topic that I'm a subject matter expert on, and I'd talk about it for 10, 15 minutes, and then somebody would ask a question, someone would interject, and after the hour was up, you move on to the next topic or the next sofa set. And I did. I thought it was going to be a disaster from my conference experience. And it turned out to be one of the best events I've ever been to in terms of signal and meeting people. So when you said we're going to do one, I said, perfect. This is going to be sweet. So that's how we're going to do it.
So we're going to do an unconference, but it's also going to have a stage and a live stream and
so
hundreds of people.
Sets, but it'll be like a political town hall or a musician acoustic set, where the stage will be in the front of the room with seats going mostly around it, and you'll have 1, 2, 3 thought leaders get on stage talking about what they're an expert on. For example, we might have Jeff Walton and Pete Rizzo talking about how Bitcoin Treasury Company KPIs or Wall Street metrics are breaking quants' brains, right? And then they'll talk about how this is all got to turn upside down. I was with Jeff and Pete in Portland on Friday, and Jeff just pulled out of his back pocket. He said, we need to start measuring NVIDIA in terms of Bitcoin. And we all just went, son of, he's right. That's amazing.
And he's got the charts to prove it.
Oh, I'm sure he's already developed them all and already knows.
Yeah, they're already on X.
What's their MNAV in Bitcoin? It's like, oh, wait a minute. The MNAV of strategy should be 10x. It's like, of course, when you flip that kind of metric and put it in terms that nobody's seen. I mean, that's the thing I see more than anything, I think, on X is people saying Bitcoin doesn't fit into my models. I'm like, yeah. It's not supposed to.
That's the point.
It won't.
That's why we're here.
And I can't make the change. I can't make the change to this. This is not the way things are measured. I've been doing it for 30 years, and to say I got to give up on everything I learned, of course, that's difficult. That's your incentive system is to go with what you know, and to have to. I mean, it's literally like germ theory when they said, "Hey, you got to wash your hands. You're killing patients," and the doctor's like, "I've been doing what?"
Yeah. Whoopsie.
Yeah, you got germs all over your hands and you're killing patients. It's like, wash your hands and they won't die anymore. It's like, no, that can't be true. I haven't been killing patients.
Investors like certainty. They like benchmarks and frameworks that they're familiar with, that they've been using for their entire careers, I would imagine.
And this turns everything upside down. Yeah, it's a little scary for people. I mean, even you could go back to gravity and Galileo and Copernicus that said, guys, I don't think we're at the center of the universe. I think we're going around the sun. And there are people like, yeah, that's probably true. And the others are like, oh, that's not good for us. Their incentive systems are broken. So when you look at Washington and Wall Street saying, no, this is the way that we get our houses in the Hamptons and our Maseratis and stuff, and you want to do what with it? They're just going to resist. They have to. It's the way they're supposed to do it. But if you go down that path, then Bitcoin's as big a deal as gravity. It's as big a deal as evolution. It's the biggest deal. I mean, it's not an invention. Don't let anyone ever tell you that Bitcoin's an invention. It was discovered. Sound money was discovered. And so if you got sound money as this new gravity type implication, there's going to be resistance. And it may not even be in our lifetimes that we see the full implications of that. But you can't fight truth. You can't fight gravity. If all of a sudden Earth says, you know what, I'm going around Jupiter once, then gravity doesn't work. And that's the same way sound money just doesn't care. It says, I'm Bitcoin. I don't care what you do. There's only 21 million of me. Anyways, that was a little sidetrack there.
Bitcoin custody is evolving, and OnRamp leads this change with multi-institution custody, eliminating single points of failure. Instead of one institution or complex private keys, OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated, cold storage, multi-sig vault backed by 3 independent, institutional-grade custodians. No single custodian can move funds by themselves, providing an unprecedented level of security that traditional custody solutions simply can't match. Protected by a $100 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, all transactions are fully auditable on-chain, never rehypothecated, and executed only at your explicit direction. This means complete transparency and control over your assets at all times. Beyond custody, OnRamp delivers comprehensive Bitcoin financial services, including lending, trading, inheritance planning, IRAs, and more. OnRamp functions as your private banking partner, coordinating key holder activity, removing technical burdens, and providing a personalized, trust-minimized experience tailored to your specific wealth preservation goals.
Yeah, as long as
Whether you're new to Bitcoin or an experienced holder, OnRamp's approach helps secure generational wealth with unmatched security and peace of mind.
schedule your tweets and yeah, that'd be great.
Visit onrampbitcoin.com today to learn more, sign up, or book a free consultation with their team of Bitcoin custody experts. Hey guys, today's episode is brought to you by StampSeed. If you're in cold storage, you know how important it is to protect your seed phrase. That's why I recommend you head over to stampseed.com and check it out for yourself. This seed phrase storage device is one solid piece of titanium. There are no loose pieces, and you can hammer your seed phrase in letter by letter When you go to stampseed.com, use promo code TIM15 for a 15% discount across the website. That's TIM15. Join us at the Win in Las Vegas, February 23rd through the 26th, 2026, for Bitcoin for Corporations. Use code KOTZ when you grab your tickets at strategy.com, and we'll see you there. What do you think the communication error is on why everyone hasn't already adopted Bitcoin, whether you're an individual, a corporate institution, a nation?
Because it's a whole new way of looking at money and wealth. I mean, something that's happened to me in the last year personally is that I realized I really enjoy saving now, and I would say that before it was about, save some, but I want to enjoy life and spend it. And now I look at organic milk and non-organic milk and a $2 difference. And I'm like, yeah.
You go with water?
I know. I'm like, kids, we're putting powdered milk on your cereal now.
Yeah.
And if you want water, that's extra.
Right.
No, I mean, it is such a change in the way that we look at money, the way we look at wealth, the way we look at how we save, why we save. I mean, I think Jeff Booth's book, Kristen Raguson's book on the end of scarcity, where they start to get into, if there's only 21 million and we all spread it out evenly, or among all of us, and nobody can create anymore, then our whole mindset's going to flip. And reading their books, Price of Tomorrow and End of Scarcity, is kind of like reading that book on the fourth dimension, when you get it for a second and then it goes away. And then you go, oh, fourth dimension, I get it. It's time, it's this. Oh, crap, I lost it again. Kind of that interstellar type thing where you're like, ooh, that makes sense for a second. So getting to a point where you don't have money that can be printed, you don't have these things that just get created out of thin air, is not how we've been working. And it's the other big weakness, is that the dollar has done so well. I can't walk around New York here and tell them the sky is falling, because it's not. If I go to Buenos Aires,
it's not falling fast enough, sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, then the ones who feel their ice cube melting faster, they're the ones that get it. But you go to Buenos Aires, you go to Caracas, you go to Zimbabwe, and they're like, oh yeah, it's completely broken. I get this right away. And then you go to kids and you go, which one do you want? This one where the denominator keeps getting bigger and your numerator stays the same? Or do you want this sound money where when you have it, you'll have it the rest of your life? They're like, well, duh. They're easier than somebody who's been trying to play the game for, well, in my case, 15 years. In your case, like 30.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, back on track. I'm glad to be joining you on this adventure of creating a media events advisory company and Bitcoin Treasuries. I know the two of us are been in Bitcoin a little bit, so we're doing this for more than just the money, but wanting to see if we can't have a hand in preventing another FTX, another Celsius, helping people see which companies may not be on the up and up, which service providers are going to treat these companies well, and helping investors not get caught up in the passion of the moment with a company that may not have all its ducks in a row.
So I guess with the disclaimer that this is not financial advice and we can't, stop people from doing whatever they're going to do, but kind of the interplay between investors, service providers, and treasury companies.
Yeah, between all three of them. And that's who will be at this conference on September 17th. Where's my camera? September 17th at Levon in New York City. Find the link below or go to Luma and look up Bitcoin Treasuries Unconference NYC. Yeah, we're going to have a wonderful slate of thought leaders and a lot of opportunities to interact. We'll be at PubKey the night before the 16th and the night the 17th. There will probably be some other side events that pop up if you pay attention. But get your tickets now. The price of the tickets is going up faster than the price of Bitcoin. And so don't speculate. You'll end up on the short end of that stick.
The one thought I had yesterday when we were recording the Hurdle Rate podcast, which...
The Hurdle Rate or the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast?
Well, we were recording the Hurdle Rate podcast, but I said the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast, and it was a mistake, but Ben Workman just thinks I'm that good at marketing. So talking
Hurdle
about
Rate, fantastic podcast,
Yeah.
by the way. You guys, it's like listening to Einstein and Oppenheimer, and it really is. It's crazy, but I keep telling people that I'm like, these guys are going to be pretty famous one day. You know, they're at the cusp of this. Anyways,
Yeah, no, just a lot of different backgrounds, especially Matt with his fixed income background brings kind of that macro structured, a lot of different aspects at the interplay intersection. But the whole there's these buzz phrases that we hear about digital Manhattan or digital real estate, but I feel like, and of course, everyone hears things differently. If you would just say to people, oh, you don't get these Bitcoin treasury companies because they're just holding Bitcoin. But if they were holding $73 billion worth of real estate, how would you feel about it? Oh my goodness. So that'd be totally different. Well, if you study Bitcoin and come to the conclusion that it is better than real estate, there's just so many different ways to not communicate what the very obvious thing to an audience. And I don't know, that just kind of struck me in particular.
Yeah, for those of us that have been in it a while, that's I get questioned all the time. How many people have you orange pilled, or how do you orange pill people? And it's like, I don't even know. I don't know if I've ever even orange pilled anyone. You can't orange pill someone. They have to orange pill themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all you can do is provide that spark, provide that little thing where one of my best friends has been in it. I've been in this for 14 years, and he just always, he maybe owned half a Bitcoin, but he was always like, no, I'm doing fine. And I've always said that going to a conference is where you usually get orange pilled, because you can't help it, right?
Yeah.
There's people just throwing orange pills around, and you choke on one, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, come to Vegas. Come on, man. If nothing else, we'll go to Vegas. And he came to Vegas, and he came to the sessions, and then he was meeting all my friends in the Bitcoin space and everything. And as we were leaving the last day, he's like, I get it now. I'm really sorry, but I get it. I was like, this is fantastic. The Bitcoin people are smart, and they get it. And this is the future of money. And that was his trigger. I have a neighbor that invited me over for a beer. I go over, and he's like, what do you do? I work at, Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin magazine. He's like, it's a Ponzi. I'm like, dude, let's just drink beers. You're my neighbor. Next time he's like, what do you like about Bitcoin? I'm like, well, it's sound money. It's scary. Dude, seriously, I don't want to talk about this, whatever. Like the fourth time he goes, hey, come over, just 5 minutes. I just got to ask you a question. He goes, how do I DCA 100,000 a month into Bitcoin? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you talked me into it. I'm like, dude, I intentionally did not talk to you about this. He goes, yeah, but that pissed me off so much. I went and did my own research. I watched a bunch of Tim Kotzman podcasts. No, he didn't. But he watched, he watched a bunch of YouTube videos.
Yeah. And maybe Robert Breedlove.
Yeah. There may be an anonymous article out there where someone he says, the orange pill doesn't have to be a suppository, right? It can be a lozenge. It can be a spray. It could be a Tootsie Roll Pop where you lick it and you put it away. You lick it, you put it away, and eventually you get to the center.
So you purposely tried not to orange pill him, and then he wanted to DCA $100,000 a month into Bitcoin?
It's crazy. That's my new strategy now. When somebody's like, hey, tell me about this Bitcoin thing, I look at them, I'm like, nah, you won't get it. I walk away.
Welcome. Boop, boop, boop.
Yo. Is anybody else here?
Oh, mine's not working.
I'm looking at like an empty spaceship.
Yeah, I know, but why is it just doing the background and not showing me?
I don't know.
It's
Have you tried
visual
getting
background
in front of the
auto.
camera? We've got some people in the chat. What's up, everybody? Yeah, let's start the party. Bukowski. I'm frantically looking for MSTR news right now. I got my Bloomberg feed up, got my S&P feed, of course, on the X timeline. I think this is live. It says that I'm live, so I'm just filling time here. So I'm the host.
There we go. Okay, there we go. I just got to move over here a little bit. Coming to you live from Delta Flight 6439. Does it work? It works, right?
It looks like it, yeah. I can see you.
Just haven't had this mic on the plane.
The chat is lively right now. We are counting down to the MSTR official S&P announcement. We're told it's happening today, right?
Yeah, where's Tim? He's just in the background trying to get himself on screen here.
I can fill a little time if we need it.
No, Rizzo, you could fill a lot of time.
That's my specialty. So yeah, coming up on the S&P inclusion announcement today, some context from James Seffert out on Bloomberg. A number of companies up for inclusion. So the S&P, a major index for the American stock world, essentially measuring the state and health of American businesses. So a number of companies up for potential inclusion today. So again, this is the James Seffert post about the largest companies that are looking at potentially being included. We've got AppLovin, never heard of that company, apparently large strategy, and Robinhood also on the docket today, and potentially a bit more. So if you go over to his Twitter, you'll see that kind of rundown of all the companies that could potentially be included. But of course, the only one that matters for the Bitcoin world, MSTR, Michael Saylor, the behemoth, perhaps entering one of the most important indexes in the American financial world. Supposedly we'll hear a result upcoming, so we're going to keep our eyes glued to the news feeds. Tim Kotzman, your usual host, I think will be here shortly. But for now, Ed Julien, how are you feeling? Are you bullish today?
I'm very bullish. I'm right at about 50% chance of inclusion.
Okay, 50%. Yeah, we had a Spaces on BitcoinTreasuries.net earlier, hosted by the great Ansel Linder. Adrian Morris, Master True North analyst, joining us. And I have to say, he cooled the vibes considerably. His thesis being, essentially this might boil down to how people look at earnings, right? That while MSTR and strategy meet a lot of the criteria, his position was potentially the big hang up here would be how they look at revenue, right? So $14 billion in Q2 revenue from strategy, earnings coming from Bitcoin appreciation. His view, essentially this might open the door to a wider look at companies to claim that commodity price increases are justification for inclusion in the index. So potentially opening up the gates to gold companies that stockpile gold, sort of using that as a basis to get in the S&P 500, or alternative digital assets, gasp, dare we say it, but potentially some other digital asset companies potentially using that, as a way to get in as well. Though we know strategy, a very tenured company, right? So not fly by night by any means. But an interesting way to look at it. Certainly cooled the vibes. Maybe Tim will heat us up a little bit. I'm very influenced by prior conversations, so I'm feeling the chill from that one.
Yeah, I don't know if Jeff Walton is confirmed to join us or not, but when you and I were standing there talking to him at the Bitcoin for Everyone conference in Portland, he kind of dropped a bomb on us and said the only relevant PE ratio is a 5-year trailing PE. And we both kind of stood there for a second and said, that's absolutely right. It's like, how can you, so strategy had a 35 billion earnings last quarter, and this quarter, it's going to be a negative number maybe, but if you do a 5-year trailing PE, it all becomes very clear. But I just don't know how Wall Street analysts are going to even consider a 2-quarter trailing or a 4-quarter trailing, a 5-year trailing.
Well, we'll take some questions for the chat. This is supposed to be a general hangout, really just trying to get the vibes up. Maybe we can get some music in here once Tim will bring a soundtrack. But a lot of people out there, I think, have been waiting for this, and certainly will be a vanguard moment for the space, right? The idea that strategy could be or is even up for consideration in the S&P 500 index, really unthinkable, right? Not something that the mainstream is ready for. Of course, Coinbase, included earlier this year in the S&P, but compared to strategy, a bread and butter company, right? They're selling picks and shovels for the digital revolution. Haven't really brought Bitcoin to their balance sheet in a big way until the most recent quarter, where they started stacking Sats, moved up that Bitcoin Treasuries.net leaderboard comfortably in the top 10. But a company that really, if you look at other companies that should have 600,000 Bitcoin, Coinbase would be one of the top contenders. So an interesting evolving structure there as it relates, to the S&P 500. But you got to wonder, does Coinbase make it easier or more palatable for strategy to get the index? Ed, your thoughts?
Coinbase's business model just looks a lot more like a steady revenue business model. The Bitcoin on their balance sheet, I don't remember if on their last earnings call or earnings statement they applied the FASB accounting or not. But if so, well, they don't have a lot on the balance sheet. I mean, not nearly as much as strategy, but it would have made a material impact. You kind of put me on the spot there, and I'm not sure about Tesla either, whether they separated out a line item on the Bitcoin gains. But it's funny how many people really don't understand the underlying businesses of these treasury companies, and for that matter, I'm not sure they understand the underlying businesses of the companies that they may be invested in, such as Tesla, or Nvidia, or Microsoft. You have to look at kind of the breakout of revenues, breakout of profits to know what these companies are really doing. But who is it? When Google first started reporting how much they were making on ads, nobody knew how to react to that. They're like, what do you mean you're an advertising company as Google? That doesn't compute, right? How are we supposed to value that? But going back to when I first really started trading in 99, 2000, man, we were throwing money at .com stocks that we had just no idea what they were doing. At Global Crossing or even at Yahoo or whatever. It was like, well, where's the revenue coming from? What's their expenses? Who knows? The price just keeps going up. I don't think that's the case here. There's really a way to take that earnings statement, break it down, and see where it's going. Speaking of old timers, we've been joined by we've been joined by the living room of.
We figure out how to hold on 1 second. I'll reverse it.
Well, while we wait for that, keep the chat lively. We've got Hasher411 talking about the announcement coming after 4 p.m. If you see me looking away from the screen, I'm refreshing Bloomberg. I'm refreshing the X timeline. And I'm refreshing the S&P page, trying to get it to you first, potentially this announcement of the rebalancing of the S&P 500 index, whether or not we'll see strategy in there. Grain of salt. I've seen your threads, though I don't think we've ever met in person. Great to be introduced.
That's true. I think I briefly met you in Las Vegas, but hey guys, this is crazy. We'll see what's going to happen in the next 7 minutes or so. I can't wait to see what happens. I could tell you that I don't think they're getting in, and I set that up because when I tend to think something's going to happen, most likely it's always the opposite. So in this particular case, I'm hoping that it doesn't happen, but then it will. So that's my rationale right now.
You think that Bitcoin's going to go up, right? And it's gone up. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's all goodness if it happens. I don't see that it'll be another watershed moment that'll happen. I think this will catch people. If it does happen, it'll really catch people off guard, and this will be something where it'll be a total surprise. It's coming right now when sentiment is not particularly good, and I think it will shift sentiment incredibly fast, and it'll be awesome. And the setup, Ed, for your event coming up a week from Wednesday, I mean that's awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, by the way, if you haven't bought your ticket yet, we're gonna have to do a flash sale.
So exclusive on the thread. Well, we're there is a bit of a financial industry brace for it. Bloomberg yesterday. I'll read some quotes from the report. But the headline: Bitcoin faithful bet on Sailor strategy being added to S&P. Basically talking about how strategy met all the criteria, right? So a sign from the financial world that they're paying attention, that they accept that strategy has done enough to be included. The most bullish line, oft quoted: if admitted, passive funds tracking the index would be forced to scoop up nearly 50 million shares worth around 16 billion at current prices, according to analysts from Stevens Inc. So we know that there was potential upside volatility here. If we get this announcement soon, we would think maybe not an immediate $16 billion buy, but there's going to be a market reaction to this decision either way, right? Grain of salt.
I definitely see that. One of the things James Seifert posted it today. He had a list on the Bloomberg terminal. So this is looking at it from a TradFi lens, and James Seifert was great about tracking the spot Bitcoin ETFs. And at that point, there was a lot of thought that happened in January, prior to January of 2024, that when the spot Bitcoin ETFs came out, that the price of MSTR would just drop. And that was not the case at all, because what it does is it validates the marketplace from a traditional finance perspective. And then MSTR has continued on this leverage play on top of Bitcoin. So that was all totally awesome for the space. And then when I saw James Seifert post, I don't know, approximately an hour ago, he had a list of the top 5 highest, market cap companies that can get into it, and strategies.
I led this session quoting that one. So Apple.
Oh, I missed that. But what was the takeaway from that session? Tell me what happened in the session where you discussed it.
Oh, no, I think I just noted that there were other participants potentially vying for inclusion, Robinhood among them, which, would potentially be, Robinhood, of course, we don't know if they own Bitcoin, right?
Well, true. And I think the other part about this, Coinbase already made it in. So from that perspective, it's not like the precedent hasn't been set already. It's possible for this to happen. And so I think that, we'll see how this play out. Look, if we look back to Tesla, which is another good comparison, it did take them for a while to get in. But the point was, if you think where electric cars have come, I don't own an electric car, but where they've come, and you see this adoption of in the marketplace, it's a real force to be reckoned with. And I think that directly relates to Bitcoin.
Coinbase. So we're talking a little bit about the discussion that we did at Bitcoin Treasuries.net space today. This idea that Coinbase paved the way. Coinbase is in many ways just a bread and butter picks and shovels company, though, right? They really haven't applied recently. They've started, acquiring Bitcoin, but I don't know. I think it may be a smart thing that they did, right? Getting into the S&P and then turning this on, maybe have to answer fewer questions. But in many ways, a different business, right? And strategy has, kicked off this whole revolution in balance sheet modeling.
It's a much different business, and I think people don't give Coinbase the credit they deserve. I mean, one of the things they did that was really, really, boring or people didn't get was that they had to get money transmitter licenses in all 50 states in the United States. And when you go back to the old days, 2017, there was a lot of friction to actually, there were the complaints that were on X, like, oh, I want to buy Bitcoin, but Coinbase is not listed in my state. So the question is, what's an easy, go meet somebody in a parking lot, give them a bag of cash, and then they'll transfer you Bitcoin. And so as the industry matured, I don't think that they got the credit they deserve, because they did a lot of this background plumbing to have people buy native Bitcoin. But MSTR, specifically MSTR stock or just strategy as a company, they did a much different play by saying, if Bitcoin is this great, which we all agree, then if it's good for an individual, then it's good for a company. And from their perspective, is they changed the FASB fair value accounting, and that took 18 months to 2 years from the time they requested it to the time it got implemented. And now we have this, as you were saying, Ed, when I joined, this earnings per share that can flow through to the balance sheet without them having to sell it. So if they did not get what happens is, by the maturation in the market, by FASB fair value accounting, has now made them eligible for this to happen. So the market has completely shifted. And one of the things I say to people is that don't get too comfortable with what you think, because every 90 to 120 days, something is going to change. And you're going to be like, oh, I understood that, but now I have to learn something new. You're always learning something new.
Yeah.
And Rizzo, by the way, I love your post, what you put up, always talking about the history. You read these things and you're like, this is what it was like in the old days. And 10 years ago, you're like, I remember 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, right? Bitcoin, traded on computers for next to nothing, and here we are sitting on the precipice of a company that's whole balance sheet is based on Bitcoin entering the S&P 500. So you got to take that long approach, right? That really this is unprecedented. I mean, we've never really seen. This is an upstart money, an upstart currency that a business has, really based their entire, and now we have a whole industry, right? Investors denominated returns in Bitcoin, companies denominating performance in Bitcoin, unthinkable maybe even several years ago. So it'll be interesting to say, I'd be curious for thoughts on whether, if you're S&P, do you have to comment on this, right? Because they're going to come out, they're going to have to issue some sort of press release. And, let's say they don't include MSTR strategy. Do you feel like they're going to have to make some statement as to why? Because it's quite possible that they might, update the index and try to avoid saying anything about it. I think it'll be interesting to see what the demand is for some sort of explanation.
I don't know if they'll make a comment on it, but I think we should check. I'm only on my phone right now, hence I had the little
I'm
camera
glued.
malfunction.
I'm glued to the Twitter right now. So
You're glued to the Twitter, see if it comes up. One of the old stories that I saw was Dan Held in San Francisco had a sushi dinner, I don't know, 15 years ago, whatever Bitcoin was, $10 each or something, and they paid in Bitcoin. I think one of the craziest things that I saw was that years later, they tracked down the owner of the sushi restaurant, and he never sold the Bitcoin. He kept it and has access to it. And it was just this charming story about how they did that.
Yeah. Hey, what we were talking about right before you came on, Grain, was, and I either don't remember or I never knew, but how did Wall Street and S&P react to the .com companies that were market cap? They were there, but maybe like an Amazon that was losing money for years and years and years. And how many of these .com companies did we not even know what they were doing or how they were going to generate revenue, including maybe the one you were with? But how is this different? This Bitcoin Treasury phase shift to the 1999-2000 .com.
Look, I'm going to tell you what the biggest difference is between now and back in the old days. During the .com bubble, I did not think about the S&P 5 index inclusions. This was in 2000. This was more than 10
what
years
was
ahead
the
of the
first,
iPhone.
company that was led in the S&P from the internet? Was it Yahoo or
Was it Overstock? No, not Overstock. They had.
Overstock? I feel like was a little later, no, because they weren't the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
wave.
but I want to get to why things are different this time. Was that we didn't have iPhone. Now we're 15 years after the iPhone. The average investor that pays attention has so much more information to look at index inclusion. What are the passive flows? I did not think about that during 2000. All we thought during the internet bubble was number go up. The fact that the internet, we knew it was going to revolutionize the whole world. That was completely not disputed. The question was, which company will benefit from it? Is it Webvan, pet foods, delivering food to your house, or is it Amazon delivering books? And we knew that books eventually would get digitized. We just knew it wasn't there yet. So I think back then the average investor was not as savvy. Now you have people that ask very complex questions. What is Bitcoin yield? The Bitcoin per share that it goes up. What's accretion? We talk about M2 money supply. Many of these concepts were not talked about ever during the .com bubble. So the average person is much better informed. And I think that's the bigger difference. Then it was, hey, am I making money on my stock? Did it do a 10x or what was stock splits was always the biggest thing to talk about, especially with Cisco.
Yeah. Hey, Grain, we're getting some static and some pops on your earbud there. Do you have a wireless one or another one you can switch to?
So I just looked up at a fun fact. So the first internet company added to the S&P 500 was AOL. So a nice historical synergy there with Coinbase, maybe.
Hopefully that sounds better. Hopefully that sounds better. But the difference was that AOL built a better dialer, and what they kind of packaged it together. It wasn't, they were the victim of their own success. And then they did I believe a merger with Time Warner. And so they really tried to reinvent themselves, but they had such a head start and screwed it up. I think strategy is in a completely different space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Coinbase is more, the parallels to AOL almost, more obvious because, if you think about what they've kind of built and, what they're doing with their kind of private L2s and things like that, much more analogous perhaps to an AOL, whereas, strategy plugging into the open Bitcoin network that we think will be the internet of money. So interesting there. We've got some comments in the chat. Keep it coming. We've got some people posting links. I'll try my best to give those a read. We've got Obsequious Knight of the Realm says I should stop F5ing 58 minutes after the announcement. That's how they get you, though. The announcement always breaks early. The leaks could come out. So I'm trying to keep you guys informed. But
Jeff just clarified. He says, for what it's worth, Tesla was not left out for years. They first qualified after Q2 earnings released July 22nd, 2020. First qualification window was September 2020, included December 2020. They were only excluded for 1 quarter.
And but that was the basis that they were just a new technology company in a new category as well. So there was some discrimination there.
Yeah, he goes on to say, if Bitcoin doesn't fail, there's a high likelihood that MSTR rises to the top of the publicly traded leaderboard, aka Bitcoin having an outsized impact on the index.
Well, there is the, let's see. Oh, no, there's an old false announcement. But yeah, there is the, we brought it up in the spaces earlier. So curious for thoughts. There's this idea that the S&P index itself, is, it's a financial product, right? And it's supposed to kind of, give a certain financial results to the investors. And so with the S&P 500, really, these are supposed to be the top American companies, right? It's very much an American financial product or the American financial markets. And, maybe the worry that, MSTR will essentially skew that, right? Essentially now you have Bitcoin, much more tied to the performance of the S&P. Gray, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, where maybe there's some hand wringing amongst the old guard, the gatekeepers, that this changes the nature of the index in some way.
I think it does. And one of the things about the index that's interesting is that the S&P 500 is market cap weighted. So I think the last statistic I saw was the top 10 companies make up 40% of the market cap. And the Mag 7 make up, I believe, its highest percentage ever. So what happened, the way I always think about it mathematically is, why buy the other 490 if 10 of them are making up the whole index? Why dilute what's goodness with the stuff that's not that great, right? So again, this goes to how savvy the individual investors are now when they look at the S&P 500. The key part here is, I think that the people that run the S&P 500 want to stay relevant because they're people, they're humans, and they think about this like, oh, why would we pick AppLovin or whatever these other companies that are potentially going to be there?
What is AppLovin?
I don't even know what it is. And can we figure out what Palantir does? I mean, I've heard their CEO talk. I'm not really sure, but I think the key part is that index has to continue to grow, and they have to bring in new companies and new technologies. And again, if you go back 10 years ago, people are like, Tesla looks pretty shaky. But now 10 years later, and Elon Musk, I may not be his biggest fan, but they're offering him 25% if he can 8x the market cap of the company, from 1 trillion to $8.5 trillion. I mean, think about how crazy that concept is. And is he worth 25%? I think if anybody can 8x the market cap of a company, they're worth 25%. Whether or not I like that person or not, that's pay for performance. So I think from this perspective, I think what Saylor's done, it got triple Q inclusion in fourth quarter. So it's not like this is impossible. The only question is it going to happen? And what's the effect of that on the stock price? So,
well, I think, there's signs that it's normalizing, right? I mean, just today I tweeted out, Ohio teachers pension funds, allocating to MSTR. So for the people watching at S&P as they're making their decision, there's, funds that have an impact on everyday Americans that are already investing, right? So that's going to count for something.
I think it does. And then we've had the same mindset or the same thought process that the people that are just buying the passive flows then get exposure to Bitcoin without even knowing about it, because they're buying, MSTR becomes part of that index. So I think that changes the landscape for this. And I think this is, it's awesome. Where we're going to go from here, I think that again, I think that if it does happen, it's a huge turning point. If it doesn't happen, I'm not really that disappointed, and I think things continue to move. There's a lot of good news coming along down the Clarity Act. I think that that's a big deal for stablecoins. I think that'll change the way the space is going. Um, I think also just going into it, I don't want to ever have to rely on the Federal Reserve, but given what's going on, if they start cutting interest rates, the macro indicators, and they're going to have to keep on doing this. And we tend to see as you have looser monetary policy, you typically have people going to riskier assets. And so from that perspective, that's a typical TradFi view of this.
We got some breaking stuff out of Bitcoin News on Twitter at Bitcoin Newscom. Thanks for Permaban21 for posting this. But it says a CNBC commercial that aired today shows Michael Saylor will be on the show Monday morning. Does that mean strategy will be included in the S&P 500 tonight? A provocative question. Hard to know the answer, but it sounds like the financial world will at least be interested in hearing from Michael on Monday, depending on the decisions.
So there was when you see these things, these are like leading indicators. Like, what does that mean? Somebody had said there. I believe the SEC put out new regulations related to small cap stocks. Can they actually raise net new shares, issue shares, common stock ATMs for various purposes? And so the general kickback to this was, oh, maybe this is signaling that Wall Street knows and to protect MSTR with its position. I think the better person, some other person said this, I think the better idea behind this is that if the SEC knows that MSTR is getting S&P 500 inclusion, what they're trying to avoid is for having 50 or 100 new penny stocks come out of nowhere that have incredibly low floats, pitching the idea saying, oh, strategy got S&P 500 inclusion. This is the next MSTR, next strategy. And therefore, we're going to start off with this micro cap, just do the filings and go do it. So I thought that that's a better type of conspiracy theory because it goes to the point, oh, if they get in, we want to regulate the market a little bit and make it a little bit more difficult for really small ones. And I thought that if they get in, I think that's true. If they don't get in, then it doesn't matter.
You're thinking that the Nasdaq announcement this week almost a leading indicator that they.
Yes, I think that's a leading indicator, especially if they get in. Then it was a leading indicator. And then the other thing is, isn't Trump supposed to have an announcement today?
He's always announcing something.
I heard something else.
The Department of War now.
Yeah. So.
I don't know. We'll be interested to see. You mean related to his Bitcoin and crypto?
Well, everybody was speculating why would he then have this announcement. So, and by the way, I read all these comments as they come through here.
Yeah.
And for this, look, I do have to go in a few minutes, but I wanted to jump in on this. I just have other plans. It's a Friday night for me. I'll be tracking this, but look, this is history being made. We've seen this, and I want to come back to the sentiment. The sentiment's been pretty crappy, and I think that the reality of it is that if you truly, Ben Workman said this. I didn't say this. He said, don't ever rent your conviction. So do your homework, do hundreds of hours of research. If your net worth depends upon this, learn about it. And then from there, make your decision on what you're going to do. And if you believe Bitcoin's good for a person, it's good for a company. And that's where we are right now. And hopefully we'll get the S&P 500 inclusion.
Well, Grant, we appreciate you joining us. You appreciate you hyping up the folks at home. According to Ragnar, shout out to him watching out there. 50 minutes left, 30 minutes now potentially to the announcement. So appreciate you coming and giving your thoughts. Of course, a great follow on X. Lots of threads coming out. And appreciate following you for these years, man. Looks like we've got Ed back. Recent tweet from Jeff Walton Master now the 107th largest U.S. company by market cap. Jumped 6 companies today, neck and neck now with Starbucks. So really, I think at this point, if Starbucks is in the S&P, maybe it's time for strategy. Ed, have we had any luck getting Tim Kotzman on? Because I know he's been trying to find his way in.
Yeah, no, he's telling me that Restream is not letting him in, which is unfortunate. So we've got an overpaid producer in the back room. But
maybe we can get him on the phone, or we can have him dial in. But keep the questions coming. We'll be watching on X, of course. Want to talk about the Bitcoin Treasuries NYC unconference. The mood there definitely going to be affected by today's ruling. Imagine things are going to be quite hype if S&P 500 green lights strategy today. That will be Michael's public appearance. Of course, I'm sure we'll address that as well. But he's among the speakers there. So anyone who's in New York on the 17th, make sure you go over to Luma and check out more about the event. As I understand it, tickets going fast and maybe almost sold out, right, Ed?
Yeah, we're down to the last tickets. We do have a fire marshal limit on that room, so if you do have intentions to go, procrastinating will not work in this case. Agenda's been finalized, put it out to a few different places. We've got Michael's keynote at 10, and then 10 different sessions with topics such as custody models, new market expansion, proof of reserves, Bitcoin-backed credit, does the operating business matter, driving MNAV, the scarcity and hidden forces, where's the supply shock, TradFi Media and Bitcoin with Natalie Brunell, TJ Miller, Mike Germano. That one's going to pop the roof off.
That's an interesting one. I didn't see that got added.
Yeah. And then Bitcoin Treasury companies, the rise of a new class of financial institutions. Will close the day out with Michael Saylor, Brian Dixon, and Mark Moss. Lots of fantastic people: Adrian Morris, Jeff Walton, Matt Cole, Pierre Rochard, CJ from Strategy, Ryan McGinnis, Jeff Park, Alexandre Lizette, Mike Cohen. It's going to be just a fantastic town hall type event that it'll be unlike anything we've seen in the Bitcoin world so far.
Yeah, well, 11,000 people watching now. I think the event's much more limited capacity than that. So if you're looking to get in and speak to the kind of brightest minds who are at the center of this movement, hop on over to Luma Bitcoin Treasuries NYC unconference. They're going fast. I'll be there talking with Ed and others, talking a little bit about analytics and what's going on in BitcoinTreasuries.net. 30 minutes out now from the MSTR strategy S&P 500 ruling. The decision will be made. We're told, there will be an announcement. We don't know what it will say, but it's either MSTR is added to the largest American index, or it's not. Either way, certainly one that people will be talking about. Keep the comments coming in the thread and the chat. Let's see, when is the announcement happening? Well, so we don't know, right? I think the end of the day is what we've been told, close of markets. But here we are, 4:30, and no official update yet. There will have to be an update. So S&P regularly issues an update about its balancing. So definitely we'll be expecting some news here, though, of course, as to when, unclear. Right now we're getting and trying to give you updates as they come in. We know that Michael Saylor will be appearing on CNBC on Monday, so certainly we'll be addressing the market either way. Ed, we haven't had a chance to talk about the NASDAQ ruling earlier this week. Grain of Salt sort of coming out and saying he thinks that this actually might be a signal that MSTR is about to be included, basically saying this was NASDAQ's way of perhaps getting the word out that copycats will have to follow some more stringent rules for buying Bitcoin. I'm not sure if you saw the announcement, but maybe putting some additional rulings in place for strategy copycats. What did you think of the news?
Yeah, it was. I like how it was led with potentially or possibly. I can't remember what the word was. Right. Almost one of those news stories just to kind of see how people would react. But then in the chat for our conference on Signal, Adrian Morris dove into its effects on ETH Treasury companies as well as Bitcoin Treasury companies. And to me, it seems like a non-story. Those kind of things that get front led like that don't seem to always happen. But it would make things a lot more difficult to their robustness in their model. I know that being a seasoned issuer is a big part of what strategy is able to thrive on, because they can issue shares and go to the ATM on these preferreds and on their stocks same day, whereas a non-seasoned issuer can't. And so if it adds in a different layer of complexity, it slows down the flywheels, but doesn't stop them, of course.
Well, we've got Pratish Sahu out in the thread. How much more time should I wait? We don't know. We'll be broadcasting up to the minute where we get some decision here, but worth maybe recapping some news for the week. It's been a big one, right? We did see American Bitcoin come out and debut, coming in at number 25 on BitcoinTreasuries.net site with a pretty healthy 2,443 Bitcoin acquisition. Eric Trump coming out and really, in his spaces and public remarks, sort of evangelizing for Michael Saylor on his behalf, talking about how this has set the new standard for how he thinks about his own companies. Of course, if we climb up the Bitcoin Treasuries.net leaderboard, you'll see at number 8, Trump Media and Technology Group, sitting at a more comfortable estimated 15,000 Bitcoin. So the Trump family now sitting perhaps, with shareholder control of upwards of 17,000 Bitcoin. Not too bad for, a group of folks who just last year were on the sidelines. Ed, your thoughts about American Bitcoin's debut this week?
Sorry, I was trying to find the Trump news, and I can't confirm this yet, but it looks like Trump's 4 o'clock announcement is that he's going to ban American IT firms from outsourcing their work to India.
Okay.
That was the 4 o'clock story, but I'm not seeing it on any of the news channels. So if I just spread a false rumor that's floating around X, it won't be the first or last time. But that looks like what his big 4 o'clock announcement was.
Interesting. So that's off the board in terms of being related to this announcement.
Yeah. So sorry, go back to your question. Was about American.
Well, we're talking about American Bitcoin and the fact that, companies are now debuting, they're coming on the Bitcoin Treasuries.net list with their buys. Some phenomenon that I've really noticed recently is just it's hard to make a splash, right? Data point that I thought was interesting this morning, GameStop now number 20 on the list of the top companies with the most Bitcoin. I mean, this was a company that just in May, debuted pretty comfortably at the edge of the top 10, over Tesla and some other folks, and has slowly drifted down the board as other newcomers have stepped up their stacking game. Of course, kindly MD Nakamoto coming out with a lot of fanfare, debuting out of the top 10. It's become pretty hard to stack your way up the leaderboard. Obviously, strategies lead now looking insurmountable, but certainly I think the question is, what does it signal to the rest of the Bitcoin Treasuries companies? And if MSTR gets included, is there hope for another entrant, that maybe they will get in as well, or do you think the category still has more time to develop?
Well, no, I mean, if strategy gets in, then there's no holding out the rest. I think the question then becomes of the ones that are the next group on the Bitcoin Treasuries.net list. Mara is a long way away from that. Tesla's there, but I don't have your list in front of me. But if you look at number 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it's a little bit of a gap before they can start looking to be on there. But if and when Bitcoin gets to 300, 400, 500,000, then yeah, there's going to be a lot of them that are going to make it there. You and I were just talking about this on your podcast this week. What is a Bitcoin treasury company, right? If you say that Apple is a T-bill treasury company and Tesla is a T-bill treasury company that also has Bitcoin in their treasury, and then Strategy is a Bitcoin treasury company, well, are they all just treasury companies, or are we really trying to separate out the Bitcoin treasury companies as something that's special and different? It sure seems like they should be. And so the further you've committed, the better off you are.
Yeah, there's definitely some. We're putting together a report for the media. So BitcoinTreasuries.net, we put together essentially a monthly communication to major media. Think Wall Street Journal, Fortune, etc. Helping to inform the stories that they're telling about this sector. And one of the big ones is how to look at these companies. What industries are they part of? We'll be pushing an update to the site upcoming where you'll be able to sort all of the companies by the industry that they're part of. So whether that's healthcare, automotive, or of course what everybody wants, which is to be a single purpose Bitcoin acquisition company. That seems like the distinction that everyone's fighting for. So in that report, we'll be putting out some of our thoughts on how we're thinking about designating someone as a pure play Bitcoin treasury company. Of course, MSTR and Strategy, not a pure play Bitcoin treasury company, by definition, having a pretty tenured operating business. What are your thoughts on this distinction, Ed? Is there something here to this, or is this the market just sort of looking for something that isn't super valuable in terms of a definition.
Well, Sharish Jajodia, the treasurer of Strategy, he in his presentation in Nashville at Bitcoin 24, he goes into depth on this. So, like, what's the ideal type of company? And I'm going to try to recall this off the cuff, but it's something like you have to have cash on the books, you have to have low or no debt, you have to be either high growth or flat growth, and he puts this whole grid of companies that fit that model, such as GameStop, and eBay was on there. I'm not going to remember the rest right now, but there's also companies that the Bitcoin Treasury strategies is not for them. At one point, we got news.
Oh, really? Where's that? We've seen from Carlo News got rejected. We're waiting for a primary source here.
Just trolling us.
I don't know. Maybe he's got the heart rate. It says JK. I don't know. So.
Oh yeah. Okay, Carlo, you're out.
Well, we won't be inviting you to the unconference.
You're not coming to this, but you just got kicked out of the Pumpkin Party. Anyways, so no, but anyway, what I was saying is got a call from an assistant treasurer or sub treasurer or whatever from a huge company in the S&P 100, if that's such a thing, and he was a Bitcoiner, and he wanted to know how do I get my company to become a Bitcoin Treasury company? Well, he had $150 billion in debt. And it was just like, there's just no way. What are you going to do? You're going to put $1 billion of Bitcoin in the treasury where you got 150 billion in debt? It just doesn't work. These are the zombie companies that we talk about that the model just doesn't fit. So this profiling of what is an ideal Bitcoin treasury company, I think is going to bring integrity to companies, because you could be out there on S&P right now and have $150 billion in debt and acquiring a $20 billion company with $40 billion in debt. And however you do that financial engineering, even though you're a zombie company, you're not growing organically. You're not really generating true positive cash flow, and you keep rising up the ranks or you stay alive. If the Bitcoin treasury companies end up not only generating positive cash flow from their underlying business, but also from Bitcoin gains, they're going to start to rise up. And so the same way in the 90s or the early 2000s, when a Microsoft and an Oracle and a Yahoo and a whoever started displacing whatever companies, Whirlpool, or I don't even know which companies were disappearing back in the 99, 2000 as the dot-coms came up. But the same thing's going to happen here. The new technologies, the new model of how the measurements work brings integrity to the market.
Well, welcome to the 13,000 plus people listening on X and YouTube right now. We're counting down to the big decision of the day, S&P 500, the major American index, expected to give a decision on its index updating. And of course, a number of companies waiting to figure out if they're included. AppLovin, Robinhood, and of course, the reason we'll all hear Strategy. Of course, no announcement as of yet, but we're glued to the S&P 500 press release, official news channel, X as well. Strategy coming out, and imagine they will give some sort of statement on this as well, which we'll evaluate if and when it comes in. But coming out today, Ed, and commenting on the NASDAQ ruling that we touched on. So essentially saying that they wouldn't be affected by this. Essentially, NASDAQ saying that these companies might have to go out and get more shareholder approval or more shareholder buy-in for Bitcoin purchases. So maybe calming the market fears there that potentially Bitcoin sales would be less frequent as a result.
Yeah. Let me throw a question over to you, because this came up at a lunch yesterday. I have a friend that all he does is rotates into treasury companies that have an MNAV below 1. And then waits for the MNAV to come back above 1, rotates into another one where it's below 1, because his thesis is just that they can't stay below 1 forever. It doesn't make any sense.
Is that a profitable strategy for him?
He's killing it, man.
Really?
He's killing it. Yeah. I just saw in the comments here, Permaban 21. Well, that's a good one. He said, Semler looking good at a 0.7 MNAV, and I'm sure Eric Semler's pulling his hair out, wondering why he's below 1. But he's got the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin's there. What's your thoughts on these companies that drop below 1? It kind of doesn't make any sense, but Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know, right? I've been pondering about this. I mean, certainly not an economist myself, right? But all value is subjective, right? And so, you got to think the company is worth the Bitcoin. It's an interesting logic, right? Do we apply it to other things? Is Tesla worth the amount of cars, right? Can it drop below the value of the machinery that it has, right? Like if you're trying to say that the assets of the company sort of equal the worth of the company on some respects, right? I think so. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think this bear market will be interesting in terms of potentially if and when it comes. Maybe not not for a while, pushing the boundaries into how far these companies can trade. I mean, obviously, I think I get the basic logic, right? The company should be worth, if it ever needed to be liquidated, right? You would assume that it would be worth the Bitcoin that it holds. But interesting that your friend found that arbitrage opportunity there. I think I'm more compelled by the people were talking about how the MNAVs can be very high, right? You gave a very eloquent defense on the podcast of why you think strategies MNAV could be 200, 300, 100, much higher, like what we see with traditional companies. So
I'd say 200, 300, but not investment advice, but just higher.
higher.
It was actually someone at Strategy that told me that it was the MNAV is a measurement of the confidence in the store of value.
Right.
Right. How confident are you that this company is going to be worth this much in the future? And on another separate business I'm involved in this morning, we were talking to some guys in the Netherlands about AI and large language models. They've been doing large language models for 20 years. I invested in one of their companies in '99, right before COVID, and COVID hit and it crashed. And so you're like just a little too early. But I asked them the question I've been wanting to ask is, will these models get more efficient, more energy efficient? And they said, of course they will. They've already got new tools out there that pick among the different models which one is the most energy efficient. And so they're shorting the hell out of NVIDIA, not investment advice, because they just don't feel that you're going to need that much energy. The models are just going to get more and more efficient. You don't need all these chips. NVIDIA crashes. So same thing with a Bitcoin Treasury company.
You've stirred up the chat with some Tesla people coming.
I know.
Coming in. But maybe you can explain to me this idea that the company must be worth the Bitcoin that it owns. I feel like on some level it's I theoretically I think I understand that, right? But then also in some cases, right, like there are companies that have assets that go to zero, right? So whatever their assets are, I'm sure Enron had lands and real estate holdings, right?
Yeah, or just a REIT, or and I'm not an expert on this. You need a Matt Cole or
yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things where you might see some, I don't know. It seems a little bit untested for me, right? Just in terms of the logic. I think for some of the larger companies, especially when you can predict that they're going to be valuable in the future and then still acquiring Bitcoin, I think that makes sense. But it'll be interesting to see, right, if some of the companies kind of on the lower end, get distressed, what happens to them. Maybe you see some of these companies acquired for their Bitcoin, but acquired at a big discount. I don't know, right? I think, usually the up markets are where we have a lot of wild ideas about how things might work, and the bear markets, we tend to find out.
Well, I mean, that's where you get into the margin calls or the liquidity calls or whatever. If a company has Bitcoin on their balance sheet and the financing that they put in place to acquire that Bitcoin is predatory, or it's not favorable to a downturn, and they're in the camp of saying this time is different, yet the price starts to drop next year, drop considerably, and they can't pay their payments and they can't raise more money, they're going to have to sell the Bitcoin. And if they sell the Bitcoin, the market's just going to abandon them. And that's where I think you can get an MNAV below 1, because what they're saying is, hey, your Bitcoin isn't secure. You're actually going to sell it to pay off the bills.
Right.
And so that's one path. I mean, if somebody was doing a custody model where they thought it was at risk, maybe they'd say, okay, well then we're not sure it's going to be there later. But
we do have some minor news out now from Eleanor Trennett, a new version of the crypto market structure bill going through the Senate out now. So, potentially some other forward catalysts. Of course, we're counting down 10 minutes away, potentially, from S&P coming out and ruling on MSTR, whether or not Michael Saylor's Bitcoin printing machine will get in the S&P, but market structure bill looks like progressing, getting a markup. Always give Eleanor Trennan a great follow. Crypto in America, her podcast and newsletter, which you can go and subscribe to. Very, very quick with the regulatory news. But the regulatory environment, really, I think, is how this whole space seems to be moving now, right, Ed? I think, we've kind of slacked off and thinking about Washington in August. People come off, but towards the end of the year, expecting a little bit more fireworks from Washington, right?
Yeah, it takes a while. I mean, it took, I'm not going to quote this exactly, but from the time strategy said, okay, we want to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, it wasn't a 30 days, right? It was a while before they could put all the things in place to even be able to buy it and custody it and such. So that was a very, dynamic tech company. Imagine the U.S. government. When the strategic Bitcoin reserve ideas came around, everybody was like, wow, January 2nd, U.S. starts buying Bitcoin. I'm like, January 2nd, 2027, is when they're going to not only figure out how to do it and where to put it and how to store it, but get the congressional approval to actually do it. How does the Fed do it? So it takes some time to put these kind of processes in place. But what do we got over here? No, a lot of, it's turning into, it's degrading into Tesla and Waymo talk over in the chat. So,
well, I think we've got a lot of people who are getting antsy. We've been going now for about an hour, of course, 10 minutes to go before we've got the MSTR announcement. Of course, we're excited to see everybody on September 17th over at the NYC Bitcoin Treasuries unconference. But, a full suite of things in and around the event. Ed, we've got the official kickoff party on the 16th at Pub Key, a great new
official on the 16th. The 16th is open to everyone. That'll be just a mess of different groups. The 17th is the official after party. That one you have to have a ticket to the show to get into Pub Key, and there may or may not be a certain chairman of a strategy making his first appearance at Pub Key. Can't confirm it yet. But if I put some social pressure on this, maybe it'll move the needle a little bit.
That's some alpha. That's some alpha right there.
Yeah. Question for you, P. You just got back from Bitcoin Asia. You've done the news desk in all 4 geographies of Hong Kong, US, Amsterdam, Abu Dhabi. Tell us for a second the difference between the different geographies, because I've noticed that the Bitcoin Hong Kong conference doesn't look like the Nashville or Vegas conference, and the Amsterdam one's definitely different, and the Abu Dhabi one's definitely different. Why do these different regions have a Bitcoin conference, but it's not the Bitcoin conference that we know?
Yeah, different flavors, right? Different regions. Of course, Asia, a long history in the Bitcoin space, right? So, we're talking about MicroStrategy right now, a company that's been around since 2020. China really was an early market leader for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. The industry as a whole. Even now, if you look at the mining sector, Bitmain and MicroBT, the 2 big mining chip manufacturers, are pretty much 100% dominated, by China and, to a lesser extent, kind of the broader geographies. But, when I was coming up in the industry, 90% of trading volume was through China and Japan. So, it's evolved in its own flavor, right? The language gap is a big difference. I remember trying to get on WeChat. There was a big effort during the 15-16 era. We were trying to coordinate technical upgrades to Bitcoin to kind of mix the cultures. But, Asia maintained a very distinct culture within the Bitcoin and broader crypto world, right? And in America, I think, we had the lockdowns and sort of the, political angst around that really became kind of the Bitcoin maximalist movement. Asia really didn't have that, right? Hasn't had that sort of kind of freedom money approach to Bitcoin adoption. Still very much focused on the making money aspect, right? I think that's why MetaPlanet, has been so sticky over there, right? Appeals to kind of people who are, mostly focused on the financial aspects of it. But I think the one thing that I saw there that I would say is that Japan. Really an undersold story in the United States. Upwards of 10 companies. You go to bitcointreasuries.net, you sort the companies by country. You could look at Japan, 10 companies from all sorts of different industries, fashion, retail, even a nail salon chain stacking Bitcoin. There's some thoughts that Japan really is going to become, potentially for the Bitcoin Treasuries movement, the dominant country outside of the U.S. simply because the macro climate, right? They have a weak yen, high taxes on Bitcoin, no ETF, though of course we expect that later this year, or at least the government is moving there. So different flavors, different communities. But I think Japan is it's interesting. It's kind of emerging again. I definitely got the feeling at Bitcoin Asia that for the first time in a long time, I remember when Japan was sort of mired in the Mount Gox collapse, one of the largest exchanges to kind of fail earlier in the space. Adoption in Japan had kind of lagged. At the Asia conference, I met folks from in-person kind of Satoshi themed restaurants to venture firms from Japan that are very focused on this treasury play. I do think that it could become normalized in Japan for companies to follow Michael Saylor's strategy and do what Metaplanet has done. Simon Garovich and Dylan LeClaire over there in terms of building a balance sheet that is more gives them more fortitude from the economic climate there. So yeah, I think you saw that on display in Bitcoin Asia. Of course, Bitcoin MENA, not much of an endemic, Middle Eastern Bitcoin culture. Not a huge amount of users. That was a very kind of course, people from the industry mostly kind of coming there. There was some local presence, but I think Hong Kong and China, they gave you a good look at just the depth of the Bitcoin industry in Asia and just how deep it is compared to that, even to Europe as well. I'd say, Amsterdam, you got a different culture out there as well. Of course, next on the docket, if you're following the Bitcoin conferences around the world, if you're waiting for the MSTR news, should be just minutes away from the S&P Standard & Poor's making some announcement on whether or not Michael Saylor's strategy will be included in the S&P 500, becoming the second Bitcoin and crypto company to enter the index, the first with a Bitcoin-centered balance sheet strategy. Of course, the chats are lively if you want to come over and join them on YouTube and X. Pop in, ask some questions. We'll be keeping it glued on X and different news outlets as we try to see when this news happens and bring it to you live. And we've got Tim finally making a long-awaited appearance. You did this on purpose, this theatrical last-minute entrance, didn't you?
Well, Reese is still showing just a black box on my computer, so I apologize if the audio is not. This very nice microphone is not being used right now. But I actually just sent post to Ed via DM that there's someone in the world expecting the news at 5:15 p.m. and so it's a little bit later than what we may have thought, right, Pete?
Well, I think right now we're flying blind a little bit, right? Some thesis is that it could be as early as 4 p.m., to inspire the stream. But right now we're all hunkered down and just waiting for it. Of course, news tends to leak, right? So could be any time now. Though, of course, there will be an official announcement. But we're keeping it tuned on X to see if anybody breaks the news. Of course, I've had a couple of false alarms you missed, Tim, in the chat. Some people trying to fake us out. We've got 15,000 people in this room, maybe trying to manipulate the markets a little bit.
Yeah, well, hey, this guy on this post you sent me, Tim, he's got a blue check mark next to his name, so he must be legit, right?
He's a real authority. Yeah, just crossed 16,000. Appreciate everybody coming and hanging out. So, Tim, why don't you're offering a fresh perspective here. Ed and I have kind of gone down the rabbit hole. Maybe just position this. I mean, you've been following the sector of the space for a while. What's this moment feel like for you?
It reminds me of last year when I saw the news come across about the NASDAQ inclusion, and I was out to dinner. Went out into the middle of the street here in New York, and it was actually a pretty cool moment. I don't know if anyone else was inspired, but I actually had Freedom Tower kind of barely in the background, and it was just kind of a very interesting inflection point of Bitcoin and TradFi, right? And then the backdrop of New York in the background. I don't know, Ed, if you guys have talked about. I'm kidding. Of course, you've talked about the unconference coming up in
Yeah.
weeks. Yeah, I think it's very symbolic, right, to talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Treasuries, the collision that these two things are on in the capital of capital. I think that's going to be really, and yeah, I did not know that Saylor, I guess, might be on mainstream TV on Monday. I saw the meme that has been recycled many times of someone saying Saylor's going to be on CNBC, and then like the hair on your arm stands up. Right, that's one of my favorites.
Mhm.
I don't know about you.
Well, there's a lot of people in the charts looking for, looking at the MSTR price, last 6 months, last year, a bit of sideways action, right? It's been a long grind, and there's some people who are, looking for maybe this is the breakout. Your thoughts?
Anything's possible. Go up, the price could go down, especially in after hours trading. I mean, I usually have my phone in DND, which disturbs many people close to me in my life because sometimes I don't answer my phone. But I saw, when you kind of scroll from the top and you see all the thousands of notifications from different apps, the one notification was a certain Bitcoin Treasury stock that was up 17%. And I kind of clicked into it and like, oh, it was up 17% in after hours trading. I mean, that's just right. If volatility is vitality, I think we're cooking.
Interesting. Well, of course, we've got the charts open here. We're now in the danger zone. Potentially, if it's going to happen, if we're going to get an update, should be in the next 15 minutes or so. Keep the chat coming. NYC Unconference. Go and head over to Luma if you haven't already. If you're going to be in NYC, come on down. Lineup is going to be stacked, and tickets are scarce, perhaps even scarcer than Bitcoin right now, right? Less than 21 million tickets left, Ed?
Yes, there are less than 21 million tickets left, but we're considering starting an options market on the tickets actually to have some people put a call or a put on the price of the tickets as we get. No, that's not true. I did not say that. But yeah, we're looking forward not only to the content. I tell this story, but when I got married, I told my wife I got the music and the booze. Those are the only two things that people remember from a wedding. She had everything else, and so good music, good booze. For a conference, I feel it's the content and the networking, right? Those are the two things, and the live desk. If you're talking about a Bitcoin conference, of course.
Well, I'm debating my wardrobe for the conference. For a while I've been on the edge of putting on the orange tie, and I'm feeling a lot of pressure as I come to this event. I know you guys have asked me to kind of do a little bit of desk action, at the conference, maybe during lunch, and I don't know. I've resisted for a while the pull of the tie, but seeing Tim there, I have to admit that I've been looking at some orange ties on the internet, conceiving myself as a suit coiner maybe. So we'll see how the appearance goes in public.
I was considering doing it today. I've got a what do they call these common workspace office here in where I live, and they can't figure out the AC. So it's 91 degrees outside. It's 85 degrees in my office. So I have to go with something a little lighter, or I'd be just dripping sweat. But anyways, yeah, we'll be there in our orange ties. It's odd. If you go to eBay and you look for orange ties, it is page after page after page of orange ties. People are selling their orange ties at ridiculous prices. Even on Amazon, I think there's a place where you can look at ties and sort, and the orange ties are the number one seller. Tim just accidentally started.
Well, I remember being backstage with Michael at the Blockworks Commerce Digital Asset Summit. He was actually regaling a small audience with his what makes a strong orange tie. He had a pretty strong opinions about
Really?
it.
Tell us that. I don't know that one.
So he said it had to have a good weight and presence, right? It's not just about the color. He looked a lot for texture. And also, not being pure orange, as he said, was another factor, having some different elements. So, maybe a fashion spread on Michael soon after his S&P inclusion.
Yeah, I couldn't be prouder of my 17-year-old son. They had to do their senior photos here at the beginning of the school year. I don't know why they do them at the beginning, but he had to do the coat and tie thing, and he said, "Dad, I need a tie," and I laid out all the ties for him, and he went with the strategy orange tie with the Bitcoin bees on it, and I was just like, "That's my boy."
Hermes Bitcoin edition tie. We've got Angry Buddha in the chat. Shout out to Joe Burnett joining, of course, the legend of the chief Bitcoin officers in Bitcoin evangelist space. Joe, appreciate you tuning in. 10 minutes away now, potentially, from an S&P 500 ruling. MSTR entering the S&P. Got to keep that motion up as we wait here. I'm live on the S&P Global page looking for news and updates. I've got Twitter open, and I've got CNBC. Of course, now we know and have learned in this chat that Michael Saylor will be on CNBC Monday, so perhaps weighing in on whatever happens today. We've had a great lineup of guests so far pop in. I've had Grain of Salt, Tim Kotzman, Ed Julien, myself, all opining on what's going to come in the next 10 minutes. Up to 16,000 people tuning in live. We appreciate it. And
what are some of those moments, Pete? For me, I think probably there's always a Bitcoin Magazine poll on this or whatever, but probably one of the hard battle for the number one moment was at Bitcoin 21, standing there with one of my best friends and my son, and they put Bukele on, and he makes the announcement. Unless you were in the room, you didn't know this, but once he said we're making it our I always get the wording right, but the currency in our country, the room went so wild, nobody heard the rest of what he said.
Yeah, I think the Bitcoin 2021 conference is peak. There was a big debate. I hosted the halving live stream for the Bitcoin Magazine folks. There was a top 21 moments of the Bitcoin epoch, and there was a lot of backroom debate about whether, because the Bitcoin conference is operated by Bitcoin Magazine, whether or not the institution could put its own event on the list. And, I really do think if you weren't there, you can go back and look at the video. Of course, that is alluding to the infamous moment where Jack Mallers is then a young entrepreneur, really just, kind of starting the success curve. Of course, now he's CEO of 21, the third largest Bitcoin treasury company, according to Bitcoin Treasuries.net. But then, wearing his hoodie, wearing his hat, bearing his feelings, openly on stage. There was a lot of rumors in the room about what was going to be announced, but I saw people crying, the emotion. I mean, it was really just a crazy moment. You had to be there and feel the room. And I think Bitcoin 2021 was the closest, I've ever felt, like the audience and the speakers, there was just so much energy and tension. Speakers being booed. I remember Eric Voorhees coming out and he said the word Ethereum and he was booed. The crowd, kind of came after him. And I remember being with Dan Held. He was signing a picture of someone's child. Someone came up to him and asked him to sign a picture.
I also remember, I didn't think the Bitcoin ETFs would be approved for another year. I was wrong on that. And that was kind of a huge moment. The first time that I was in Amsterdam, actually, and Amsterdam has a lot of stores where you can use Bitcoin. And I had an Xbox, and the Xbox had to connect to an old TV, so I needed an RCA cable. I find this little shop, they accept Bitcoin, and I bought an RCA to Xbox cable for, I think, like 0.2 Bitcoin. And still have the receipt, don't have the cable. But, those moments that come along, like hopefully this one, where we're going to remember when strategy jumped on.
Look back and remember. I think the great moments in Bitcoin history, the halvings, I think have all been pretty memorable for me. I remember where I was and who I was with, even during the lockdowns. Remembering those kind of where we were just distributed around the world, and some of those early conferences. Of course, tough out there on X these days in the Bitcoin world. A lot of a lot of accusations and interesting debates, but you got to remember that big picture. Right now we are on the cusp of history, potentially just 7 minutes away from S&P Global coming out and making a decision on strategy, either entering this index, approved or denied. That is the question, of course, on everybody's minds. We've been talking about it, but it'll be something to see the market reaction. Of course, we've got the charts up, watching with bated breath to see what comes in. And
Tim, did you want to announce? Do you want to make the announcement? Should you? Yeah, I'll do it for you. So coming up in November, Tim Kotzman, over the Thanksgiving holiday, will be doing a 42-hour digital conference, 42 hours straight. of content. I think there's going to be a lot of gaps in there. Oh, I didn't tell you about this?
I'm very excited. I also just found out live right here, right? This is kind of like the unconference, right? It's unscripted. It's surreal. I don't know whether I'm dreaming or really on a live stream right now, but yeah, if this S&P news does not come out, this might turn into another 21-hour.
21-hour live stream, yeah. Well, we're refreshing. We've got folks in the chat. Shout out to Ragnar, who's on there listening to us. The cutting edge of what's going on in Bitcoin. Metrics are evaluating these companies.
I feel like we're on the cusp of something right now, only based on the fact that when I'm looking at the screen, the live viewer count is just kind of like inching up from like 17.3 to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 17.9. So I don't know. I think people are like, all right, it's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. I should probably tune into these guys.
Yeah. And then the hard part, we got to wait till Monday to see what it does to price. But oh well.
That's true. You know, the TradFi market's letting us down once again. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think it will be a big, you know, I guess there's a question of, you know, where does strategy go from here, right? You know, so what's the next domino to fall? Let's say it gets included and the S&P is that it, right? Or what's the next milestone? If we're expecting strategy to become the world's most, you know, valuable company, I think that's really the expectation from there. Flipping Berkshire Hathaway.
What are all of these other indexes at? I heard you say an S&P 100. So like as it just kind of goes towards the number one company in the world, it's got to hit something, and obviously re-weighted, correct? As it kind of goes up from, if you're the 500th company versus the 400th company, that definitely, to my understanding.
Yeah, there is no S&P 100. I things come out of my mouth all the time. That this is why
I'm
always
fact check. You got to fact check Ed.
I know. Something comes out, and I'm even asking myself, I'm like, wait a minute, where did that come from? But my intent is good. Let's put it that way. You know, Mara keeps accumulating. 21 has got a big number. After that, it's just a question of, you know, who's going to come in with a big number that just kind of hops ahead of everybody. Where's GameStop at?
GameStop down to number 20, you know, it's just falling. Tesla as well in a downward spiral. It used to be kind of in the top 10. But yeah, the changing of the top 10 has really been the big story, I think, of the summer months, right? A lot of the stocks sideways, but a lot of new entrants and, you know, BSTR, Adam Back's company, Jack Maller's company, still haven't seen them come out and really put the acquisition playbook, you know, to work. So a lot to expect in the fall, I think. You know, I think.
Well, my offer still holds. Ryan of GameStop, if you're out there, I will cancel one of the Sailor sessions to get you. Well, I'll put you with Sailor to talk about GameStop and what your plans are and why you bought so little. But we'll also let you set up a GameStop pop-up shop in the lobby where you can sell Pikachu dolls and Pokemon cards. But everybody wants to know what happened to GameStop and why they didn't make the full commitment. But it'll come.
I felt watching, you know, the presentation of Bitcoin Vegas. You know, I just, you know, I couldn't get a feeling for why, you know, they did it, right? Obviously, you know, buying Bitcoin is good. I think, you know, I'm always confident that Bitcoin is going to go up over time, but you know, I didn't get a sense of conviction there, right? And I think people are going to look at that when they're looking at the different companies to invest in, you know, the culture, the conviction. Certainly, a lot of the fanfare around MetaPlanet, right, is just. Great Bitcoin officers, smart, you know, putting forth an interesting culture there and doing it in an interesting market. I think there's a lot of teams out there looking for similar success, but no clear winners. I guess maybe to keep it spicy here, is MetaPlanet number 2 already? Do we think they're going to get up to number 2 by the end of the year?
By the process they have in place, yeah. I mean, Mara's not out there raising as much in the capital markets. They're getting it through mining, and so it's going to be more of a steady climb for them. You know, this new one out of Netherlands, they're coming in with a big number, but it doesn't get them, you know, super high on the chart really quick. I was just going to pull up the S&P 500 and look at, who are some of those companies in the top 20 that could just blindside us and say, oh, the S&P 100 is a thing. Oh, my bad. My bad.
News. And also, if we just have, hopefully, maybe a minute or so left, I don't have the list in front of me, but could one of you just run down the top 10 on bitcointreasuries.net so that when
So coming in at number 10, we've got Coinbase Global Inc., most recent purchase coming in its Q3 disclosure, starting to stack sats. We've got CleanSpark at number 9, a very quiet number 9, the Bitcoin mining firm, not super public about its accumulation, but holding strong. Number 8, we've got Trump Media Group, an estimated purchase of 15,000 Bitcoin earlier this year. Riot Platforms at number 7, another Bitcoin mining company. Metaplanet number 6, so with 20,000, they have really climbed the ranks. Number 5, Bullish with 24,000, just went public last week. A lot of debate internally about that listing. We did get some verification, or at least some attestation from Bullish that they are holding that amount. So for the folks who are analyzing our data, we're pretty positive about that one at this point. Bitcoin Standard Treasury Company number 4, that's Adam Back's new Cantor-backed vehicle. 21, Mara and Strategy leading out the top 3. And I got to end it because it's 5:15. My camera's out. The drum roll. What happened? We've got the question marks. I'm adding to the hype here. I don't know what happened to my camera, but it is the moment where we should be hearing an official declaration. Hold on, let me triage.
S&P 500 companies by weight. Number 1, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Meta, Broadcom. I just don't see how any of those companies are going to sit down with their executive teams and their boards and throw a few $1 billion into Bitcoin. It just seems like a barrier that the Vanguards and the Fidelities will put up to say, no, we don't want that risk in your treasury. It's just too much career risk. It's got to be the ones from the bottom working their way up. So S&P 516, still nothing. Did we get the right day?
Maybe it's next Friday.
Yeah. Let's see. Somebody throw up something spicy in the chat. And Pete just bailed on us.
Hey, everybody takes a turn, right? We appreciate Grain of Salt joining us. We appreciate Pete literally hosting while I tried to figure out how to get on without using my cell phone. So technology is great when it works. And I guess my question for you, Ed, would be what are the factors that are going to influence the top 10, the top 100 list changing over time? Is it if you're not a true leveraged Bitcoin equity, you're going to kind of drop out of that top 10 within the next few quarters, or is it more nuanced than that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the creativity, it's the flywheel, it's the how big is your capital market. Metaplanet seems to have a really good plan in place to be able to keep that flywheel going and generate more money out of the capital markets. I don't believe that there's going to be a Nicaraguan treasury company come out of nowhere here and say, hey, we've raised $400 billion, right? We know where the big markets are, the Germanys and the Frances and the US and the Japans. I don't even know if there could be a Chinese Bitcoin treasury company, probably not. But you're going to see some movement there. I think the more shocking thing will be when you get the ones that come out of nowhere that are already just heavy in cash, but kind of contradicting myself that I'm saying that it's going to happen, but at the same time not happening. Okay, so Tristan S is saying Robinhood included. I don't have Bloomberg. Maybe Tristan S is playing with us. Robinhood is taking off up 8%. And after hours, it's just you don't know what to believe. And then now we got a second or third saying no MSTR. Let's see where we can get confirmation on this. My X feed for some reason is full of Sydney Sweeney, so I'm not sure where I'm going to.
We have Jeff Park 5 minutes ago. Everything happens for a reason, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah. I think actually Rizzo saw it and said, "Oh, I'm out of here." Keep posting. If somebody could put a link over in the chat on either X or YouTube, we can jump over to that. CNBC just put the alert out.
1 minute ago, James Seifert, S&P index changes typically announced between 5:15 and 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. Should be any minute now.
Insiders would have pumped it by now. Yeah. CNBC just put the alert out. Let's see if we can find it here.
James Seifert, 1 minute ago. AppLovin, Robinhood, MCore Group to join S&P 500 index.
No MSTR. That doesn't sound good. Wall Street heads, I'm not finding it anywhere. Rizzo rugged us on the announcement by bailing out. I'm going to have to go buy my lottery tickets now, 1.8 billion.
1 minute ago, James Seifert reposted Joe Burnett stating MSTR not joining S&P 500 today.
Yeah, this is that last 2 minutes in the Super Bowl when you're down by 21, right? People start just filing out the door. Okay, well, still, the Bitcoin Treasuries unconference NYC, September 17th. Fantastic opportunity to get up on the mic and complain about this. Saylor will be there himself talking about it. We hope to see you there. Go to Luma, put in Bitcoin Treasuries unconference to purchase your ticket, be in the room. Got Tim Kotzman's podcast, Hurdle Rate, that is on often and frequently. What's it called?
Hurdle Rate podcast, is that what you're referring to?
Oh, the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast. So, yeah, I doubt we're going to get Rizzo back. I think he saw the writing on the wall.
Let me actually check and see who's in the waiting room. It's you and me.
You and me. That's pretty typical. We close down the bar. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Got Patrick Liu. We will see you there. Gemini, one of our great sponsors. Your coffee cups will have the Gemini logo on them. Anybody else here that Mr. Lee saying, yep.
And
I guess we find a graceful exit. Do I just disconnect and leave you alone, or would that be not cool either?
Absolutely do that. To echo your sentiment, Ed, thank you everyone for joining in. Thanks everyone for joining. Very symbolic that we have 21,000 people, now 21.1K people on the live stream. So yeah, we appreciate you joining in. It does appear, based on James Seifert's repost, that strategy MSTR has not been included in the S&P 500 as of today's decision.
I forgot my popcorn. This is gonna be a popcorn night on X, right?
Absolutely. There's still time to pop it. It's only 5:22 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, we will see you September 17th in New York, or on our live stream. We should have at least 100,000 people on that live stream. It's going to be the most beautifully produced event you've ever seen in the Bitcoin space. And we'll be here for you to provide more information on the Bitcoin Treasury space, as well as anything to do with Bitcoin that kind of relates to institutional adoption.
Absolutely. We'll see everybody September 16th in New York at PubKey official, and September 17th, PubKey official. Obviously, the unconference, 8 a.m. the doors open. Get there early.